My name's Sarah MacArthur. I'm the moderator. I'm currently the CEO of Power of XYZ. We are a creative agency with a marketing background, but also our love for violence prevention, impact around the world helps us to partner with great organizations and Pave Prevention being one of them. So I'm really thrilled to get to be here today. So thank you for having me as moderator. And so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce this lovely panel, and then each of them will take a few minutes to introduce themselves, their background, and anything they'd like to share. So we have Nancy Lanou with Thousand Waves, Ryan Leibel with Thousand Waves, Lucy Sancho with Thousand Waves, and Arlene Lemus with Pave Prevention. So I'm going to go ahead and pass along to Nancy so she can go ahead and introduce herself. Nancy, once you're ready or you're done, will you please go ahead and pass it on to Ryan and Ryan to Lucia and Lucia to Arlene? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. To begin at the beginning, I started out in graduate studies in international communications, and I was just starting my career as a journalist in New York City when I discovered martial arts and self-defense. And I dove into them intensively and derailed my career path entirely, but ultimately was able to find my passion. I moved to Chicago in 1984 and started Thousand Waves the following year. For 30 years or more, I co-directed Thousand Waves and served as co-head instructor with my partner and spouse, Sarah Ludden. I tried to resign before COVID started, but then came back to help the second generation of leaders make it through the pandemic. I still train with my martial arts teacher in both of our old ages. I've earned the rank of 7th degree black belt, and I hold ESD teacher certifications from the Association of ESD Professionals and from the National Women's Martial Arts Federation. These days, I'm focusing on my role as an active member of the Thousand Waves ESD Teacher Corps, where I lead programs and work on curricula and mentor new teachers. I also am really enjoying collaborating with my friend Arlene's Pave Prevention and getting to be recently a facilitator for the first time of their amazing workplace safety programs. Ryan?
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Sarah, for moderating our panel. My name is Ryan Leibel. I am the executive director of Thousand Waves. I've been in this role since 2016. Nancy left me a great organization, I have to say, her building on her strong foundation and her partner, Sarah, over many years. So we're in our 40th anniversary year. Nancy's going to talk a little bit more about Thousand Waves in a minute. I began training at Thousand Waves in 2004 in our martial arts program. So a little over 20 years ago. I got involved pretty quickly after that in our empowerment self-defense work as well, starting to volunteer in that program. And I really fell in love with that work. I came on board as a staff member after serving on the board of directors. I came on board as a staff member in 2010 as our director of operations. And with an eye towards, I think Nancy and Sarah were thinking of succession in that transition as well. I love our organization. I love the work we do, both karate and empowerment self-defense. And I'm excited to share a little bit today about what we do with everybody who's here. Thank you for being here, all of the people as well in attendance. Lucia.
Hi, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Sarah, for moderating, and thank you all for having me. My name is Lucia Sancho. I'm the director of children's programs at Thousand Waves. I started training in Seido Karate at Thousand Waves 18 years ago when I was 9 years old, and I have been here ever since. I've earned the rank of 4th degree black belt in Seido Karate. I started working at the dojo in various capacities all through high school and college. After the pandemic, I took a year off to pursue a master's degree in early childhood studies at the University of Roehampton in London. And then I came back to the dojo, and I'm very happy to work here full-time, directing the children's programs, teaching all the kids' classes, and getting to combine my love of martial arts and my passion for self-defense with my interest in teaching and working with children. And I will pass it off to Arlene.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, fellow panelists and Sarah for moderating. I feel a little left out because I also am a member of Thousand Waves. So you can put Pave Prevention /Thousand Waves on there. Really excited to be here. My background is a lifelong martial artist and / athlete for as long as I can remember. And those two things have really shaped my life around empowerment and safety and moving through this world safely. And it has heavily influenced the direction and the curriculum and the influence and impact that Pave wants to have. So I'm excited to have this group here and have this discussion. I know that my panelists and my team at Pave will be a little upset with me if I don't also mention that I captured a gold medal in the sport of Taekwondo at the Olympic Games in 1988. So I will share that with you as well. But what we're doing and what the group is doing, that they will share the information on things they are doing and what other people in our movement are doing really is changing the world. So what happened at the Olympics, small little blip, but what this movement is doing is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panel. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. We're honored to have you with us today. Nancy, for you, please tell us a little bit more about Thousand Waves and your work there.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. Thousand Waves is a community-based nonprofit organization. We're centered in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. Our mission is to foster fitness, healing, empowerment, and peacemaking. And we pursue our mission through two main lines of programming: traditional martial arts and empowerment self-defense, or we're going to mostly call it from here on out ESD for short. Our martial arts program teaches a system called Seido, or sincere way karate. And we teach it not as a sport, but as an art form and a health practice. Close to 300 current members, kids as young as 5 and adults of all ages, are served in ongoing classes at our dojo. The karate they learn there engages their body and their mind in order to build a strong spirit to help them face whatever challenges life throws at them. We hope and trust that the skills our members hone in their training with us are carried out into their lives outside and enabling them to make a really positive waves set in motion in all the spheres where they operate. Our ESD programs are shorter term. We offer workshops and courses for adults and children at our center, but most importantly, we partner with businesses and other nonprofits and schools to bring trainings to their staff and clients and students and members. And our ESD programs focus on basic boundary setting and de-escalation skills and how to apply those skills with strangers, people we know, and even people we love. Our programs are trauma-informed, and they're customized to address the specific type of violence that the participants are targeted for. Scholarships and sliding scale fees, thankfully, help make the programs as accessible as possible.
Thank you, Nancy. And I always love hearing testimonials from people who are a participant who have been impacted by the work. So we're going to go ahead and listen to a few of those.
The environment was very welcoming, and that drew me in.
To me, martial arts is something that I came into just looking for a way to get more physical exercise. And what really drew me to Seido Karate specifically is that the emphasis on mind, body, and spirit. So it's not just physical exercise, but that it's also a way to challenge your mind and develop emotional capabilities as well.
I never wanted to be a martial artist. It was never a dream of mine. And when I was 49 years old, I went to a performance of Thousand Waves Martial Arts and Self-Defense Center. And I fell in love with the beauty and the power of the art, particularly since it was being presented by a group of strong women. And I also found that night that there was a connection between martial arts and healing and self-defense.
I am pleased to report that all of those aspects, fitness, empowerment, healing, and peacemaking, has applied to me throughout my whole tenure training here at this dojo.
I think what I love so much about the experience that I've had training in martial arts and that my kid has had training in martial arts is the lessons that I've gotten around stating what I need, but also paying attention to what other people are telling me.
I identify as a survivor of violence, of sexual abuse and incest, and something in me knew that I would find in martial arts a healing for those parts of me that had been damaged by that abuse. And indeed, I have found it to be. Martial arts has forced me to be visible where I wanted to be invisible.
I know that I think the common perception of martial arts is that one is violent in some way. And I think that when I began to training, that was one of the first bubbles that were burst, if you will. It's exactly the opposite. Our goal is to create peace. And then how we do that, of course, is learning these skills to confront violence.
I think my expectation about martial arts and self-defense was that it was about aggression, an aggressive kind of strength. And what I found instead, and what has kept me coming back, is that it is about developing my own strength and understanding my own strength, but using it and understanding it in relationship with other people's strengths and needs, that it's a mutual respect.
And I think if I was going to pick one thing out that impacted me the most is Thousand Waves, right? I didn't notice this when I was a kid, but it was revolutionary that men and women were like completely equal, trying to create this space where there wasn't tension, where men weren't on top, weren't dominating. And martial arts in most places, that's the men's world. And I grew up in a place where that was not true. And it wasn't that there was a power imbalance, it was just that it was equal. And that takes work, and there was a lot of work.
First, I would say that it's so awesome to be a part of a dojo where women are so at the forefront of not only leadership, but just the members of the dojo. So in that way, I have a lot of role models and people who inspire me to be strong.
Karate's always been therapeutic. I really love how I can just relax and I just feel confident in what my body knows to do. It's muscle memory, and that's very relaxing for me. But as a young woman, it's hard to feel confident in your body, especially in a Western culture where lots of body images are projected onto us. And even if you don't notice, you don't notice at all. They're on Instagram, they're in movies. It's just like this idea that, no, there's this one specific thing that is right, that's like beautiful. And that's not true, first of all. And I think that the confidence that I can control my body, I really know what's up with it, and I can move it, and I know how to control it.
It has given me opportunities to stand up and set boundaries. We practice in class saying what we want, saying what we need, which was not something that I learned to do as a survivor, and my art gave me opportunities to do that.
Growing up in the martial arts has really led me to be able to take risks in my life to make my life bigger and more exciting for me. I don't feel like there are things that I'm going to do that I'm less likely to be successful at because of my gender or my age. I'm confident I can do things.
I think for me, seeing testimonials like this always brings inspiration and love hearing empowerment. And I think that it's really important to remember that martial arts can be transformative at any age. And so we want to show a video of what it means to grow up in martial arts and the lessons that are learned from it.
The environment was very welcoming, and that
We might be stuck
drew
over
me in.
here. Give me just a moment.
The environment.
We
There we
believe
go.
Thousand Waves is a great place to grow a human being. We have worked hard to foster an inclusive and welcoming environment where students are encouraged to try their best every day, regardless of their skill level or ability. With patience and practice, we see the growth in our students' physical skills as well as their moral character. Training in the martial arts from a young age teaches strength, focus, and discipline. Young people get to experience what it means to set goals and the work ethic needed to achieve them. They learn that with resilience and determination, they are capable of extraordinary things. Being part of a dojo community teaches us to be compassionate individuals and to take responsibility for our behavior and actions. These are empowering life skills that young people take with them into the world. They become confident leaders with the ability to communicate assertively and the courage to stand up for what they believe in. For young women and girls, these experiences are especially meaningful. Growing up in an environment with strong female role models allows them to envision a world where they can be strong too. Feeling their physical power on the training floor combats the negative stereotypes and discrimination girls are faced with every day. They learn to overcome obstacles, and that positive reinforcement can be applied in any area of their lives. Training in the martial arts teaches girls how strong they can be inside and out, giving them the tools they need to take up space in a world that may not always want them to. We believe thousands.
Little bit of a tech. Okay, great. Sorry about that. You never know with tech, especially online. So thank you for your patience. These videos to me, they really demonstrate the impact of Thousand Waves and having those disciplines and the lessons learned. And one of the components that I want to talk about today, or that we're going to talk about today as a panel, is ESD. What is ESD? And that's just that next layer deep dive into what Thousand Waves does. So Nancy, will you please talk to us about what is ESD?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. So ESD, again, let's remember, stands for Empowerment Self-Defense. The ESD movement began in the 1970s, arising both in Europe and in the US, and its roots are in the women's liberation movement. But over the past 50 years, it has expanded to include lessons from many other social justice movements as well. ESD is very different from the standard guidance given by male experts, by which I mean police and most male martial arts teachers who are often ex-military people. We do not give women a list of rules to follow, nor do we teach them how to come out on top in a fight in a bar. Instead, we address the actual issues that those targeted for gender-based violence most often experience. And we focus again on verbal skills that can stop abuse and assault in their very early stages before it turns physical. Sadly, skills alone, though, will not keep women and girls safe if they've been socialized, as so many of us have, to be passive and to question our self-worth. That's why we stress these three key principles. 1, you are worth defending. 2, you can defend yourself. And 3, someone else's choice to use violence is never your fault. ESD takes a very strong stance against blaming victims for the violence that they experience. That's one reason our programs have to be trauma-informed. We know that abuse and assault create lasting emotional, mental, and physical damages, and we're committed to helping survivors access these skills that they need and deserve without being re-traumatized. Ultimately, ESD is as much about healing as it is about prevention. We see the problem of justice of violence through a social justice lens. By focusing attention on how systemic, large, intersectional violence affects individual lives, ESD can really transform fear, shame, and isolation into righteous anger and activism. A final aspirational goal we have in ESD is to inspire people to serve as allies across the lines that divide us. We'd like to see more white people helping to dismantle racism and more straight cisgendered people in the forefront of interrupting anti-LGBTQ violence. I hope this gives you just a sense of the ESD movement's vision and of the passion that drives us forward. And now I'll let my colleague and fellow ESD teacher, Ryan, tell you about the role of men in the movement and share some of the data we have now on ESD's efficacy.
Thanks so much, Nancy. As I mentioned before, when I first started doing this work, it was about 20 years ago. I really didn't know much at all about ESD, or Empowerment Self-Defense. I certainly didn't know that acronym. I was a karate student, pretty new to the art, and just interested in volunteering in our school. And this was an opportunity that we had, was to assist in our self-defense programs. I really fell in love with the work right away. I could see the way it worked in women's lives to give them their voice. They discovered their voices, and you can really feel it in the classroom in the moment. And it was just such meaningful teaching to be doing that I just fell in love with it instantly. It's very unusual from my experience to have something that palpable that you can sense in the classroom. But I did learn pretty quickly that the world of empowerment self-defense is a world that's for women by women. And I do feel that's as it should be. Of course, over the course of the development of the movement, it came from a feminist uprising to the dominant patriarchal establishment. That's its roots. But thanks to Nancy's leadership, Thousand Waves does have a long tradition of men working as allies alongside women. And those of us who train there really believe in women's leadership. We actually probably say that's one of our favorite things about Thousand Waves, is its roots in women's leadership. So I do, when I'm out there teaching self-defense, rely on my lineage and my teacher's status as one of the founders of the movement, Nancy, that is to say, to give me some credibility in the field. I always talk about learning everything I know from her. So I think that's important to ground my work in the work that went before me. I also will try to make it clear that I've done a lot of listening. I try not to be that domineering male in the room. I am standing in front of the room, so there's that. But I do try to let the voices in the room predominate and hear from other women and their stories. So that's important. I do also think that being an openly gay man has something to do with my success in these classrooms. I think it's entirely possible for a cis straight man to be a good, effective self-defense teacher. But I have to say, I expect that probably some women experience a little more sensitivity coming from a gay man than they might a straight man in some of these environments. Just something that I think is probably true. I haven't talked to a lot of people about that. And the last thing about gender, I guess I'd say, is I think we have a real lack of, and to exclude half of the population is probably not the best strategy for organizations working to get this work more broadly distributed. It's probably one of the biggest barriers we have to doing more work is a lack of teachers. The demand for the programs, the awareness about the programs is one half of it, but we also have to be able to supply it when it comes forth. Just some of my thoughts about gender in the work. I also want to talk a little bit about some of the data that we have started to gather about ESD working. It's really phenomenal. We have a number of studies recently, but I want to talk about three in particular today. One set in Nairobi, Kenya, one is set in Canada across 3 universities, and one is in Oregon here in the US. So the first one I want to talk about is this program that was done in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a 6-week intervention. A woman named Lee Sinclair is an ESD practitioner out of the Bay Area, and she travels extensively in Nairobi to deliver these programs. These girls have an extraordinarily high risk of violence. Prior to this intervention, about 24% of them on an annual basis had experienced sexual violence. This intervention, when you see at a 10-month follow-up, that only 9.2% of the girls who had experienced that intervention experienced a sexual assault in the previous 10 months. Again, compared to 24% of the people who did not receive this intervention. Now, 10% still a ridiculously awful number, but a reduction of over half in victimization of sexual assault is not something that any other intervention has ever been able to show. Those kinds of numbers just don't exist in anything else. So this stuff really works, and it really worked in Nairobi. And let's go ahead and go to the next one, talking about a woman named Jocelyn Hollander, who's also a ESD teacher in the field, a professor at a university in Oregon, delivers a 30-hour, 10-week program to about 75 university women. She also had a control group. So that's the other thing about these studies. They involve control groups. They're very rigorously evaluated. They're in peer-reviewed journals. Right. This one in violence against women. Again, after this particular intervention, these are university women, students at the university. Over half the victimization rates almost are halved in this study. So you'll see some of these after the 1-year follow-up, 20% of the control group reported unwanted sexual contact, where only 9.3% of the intervention group, the people who received this training, reported that kind of contact. And that last number is really an amazing number. 0% of the intervention group experienced rape. whereas almost 3% of the control group did. Again, these numbers are just extraordinary. You don't see them for any other types of interventions, certainly not for sexual assault. The last study is the biggest study, perhaps the most impressive study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Charlene Sin, another practitioner in the field up in Canada, had a really large group at 3 different universities. About 900 people participated. Half received a 12-week course in what they call resistance training, which is empowerment self-defense, and another half of this group received no training. After the follow-up period, once again, almost half of sexual assaults, the people who received the training experienced sexual assault at nearly half of the rate of the ones who didn't. These results are consistent across place and across time. What we see is multiple sessions and multiple hours of this kind of instruction really producing these kinds of results wherever they're delivered. I think that the case for this work being important, vital, is clear.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Nancy. What I love about having this type of research is that it creates a powerful understanding that these skills truly make a difference in people's lives. But I think even past that, going layers deep, is that not only in the individual life can it make an impact, but it can make an impact in families, in relationships, in communities, and in the workplace. And I think that's really an important component of these skills, is that having this research really helps affirm like these skills do matter to us. They matter to our individual lives, our families, and our communities. And we're thankful. Thank you for sharing that research. And next, I'm really excited to get to hand off to my friend Arlene Lemus here just to talk about her journey, because while we love statistics and we love research and we love foundational pieces, I think it's people's journeys and their stories that also really bring that full circle for us. Arlene will get to share a little bit about her journey here in just a moment, but she spent her career advocating for athlete safety on and off the playing field. And this commitment to safety advocacy ties in well with her role as the CEO of I'm the CEO of Power of X-Way, CEO of Pave Prevention, and she'll be going over that a little bit more later, but right now she's just going to tell a little bit more of her personal story. Arlene?
Thank you, Sarah. I want to start just by saying the whole idea of this presentation is so meaningful to me because I have had the positive impacts of martial arts. I have had the positive impacts of empowerment self-defense, and they have taken me and shaped my life. So I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I don't remember life without it. And the gifts that I established, that I gained then, continue to impact my life on a daily basis. And when I say that, I don't want this to sound like I am something special, because the facts, the data and the research shows us that women and girls who experience a positive sport experience make up 94% of the C-suite level positions. And 80% of the females in Fortune 500 companies have had a sport experience. So when we can combine an activity like Thousand Waves with, it just impacts everything that comes after that. So what I mean by that is financial situations improve, where people live improves, other opportunities improve because of these early experiences. So my personal journey took me from martial arts to sport martial arts to capturing a gold medal in the 1988 Olympics, where I represented the United States there in the sport of Taekwondo. And all through that process, even as a teenager, I was advocating for for safety of athletes, for safety of my peers. And that came through not physical skills, but came through these human safety skills that empowerment self-defense imparts, and also martial arts imparts. But it's a laser focused for empowerment self-defense, for people to use their voice, to understand that they are allowed to take up space, to set a boundary. So this is the journey I have been on. I am so grateful for the gifts that martial arts and empowerment self-defense, and now imparting human safety skills in the workplace to give people these opportunities. So I hope that as you move through this presentation, you see that connection to giving our young girls opportunities like Thousand Waves is giving to the community here in Chicago, to young girls, young boys as well, but specifically young girls, because it sends them on a trajectory that's completely different than if they aren't exposed to that type of activity. I hope that you are seeing the importance and why we need to give our young girls opportunities like sport, like martial arts, like Thousand Waves, and continue that with a follow up of ESD training as they mature in age, and then support workplace training that also imparts these skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Now we'd like to take a moment to just offer, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'd like to moderate any questions that might come in. Okay, we have one. What is the connection between safe workplaces and women's empowerment? Can you share an example? And anybody on the panel can take this.
I think that's more in your purview, Arlene, maybe.
Sure, Nance. Yeah, and we can discuss it too. You can chime in as well. Why is it important that the skills that empowerment self-defense imparts, why is that connected to workplace safety? When not only women, but when people, employees can set a boundary, when employees can come to work and present themselves as their whole selves, when they can feel like they are heard, when they can enter a room and be included, all of those things are skills that empowerment self-defense hopes to bring into the world. And having that type of skill set and having those things embraced in the workplace is only going to improve productivity, improve things like reducing turnover, reducing training costs. So this is why it's important to have those two things merge in workplace. And I know that, Nancy, if you have anything else to add to that, please do.
I would just say, both in my own research and definitely what I've learned since joining forces with Pave, is that when you ask people, how are things at work? You hear what's going on, and that these issues that this panel is talking about, harassment, verbal harassment, exclusion, social exclusion, lack of cultural sensitivity, all these points that can make a person's work life experience a misery and make them ultimately decide to leave and get another job, are things that empowerment self-defense directly addresses. So there's a straight out connection. We need the skills of ESD in all the spheres of our lives, not just in our personal lives, not just in our work lives, but really in all the different environments where we live and work.
Yeah, exactly, Nancy. And I'll just add to that if I have time, Sarah. We think of the word violence as being this, especially in a workplace setting, of an active shooter situation or violence that comes in to perpetrate a crime. But really, the things that are impacting, which are violence, it is the omission from a meeting. It is bullying. It is lighting. It is those things that are really what we call death by 10,000 paper cuts, right? That's what's impacting. That's the type of violence that is derailing people within the workplace today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In fact, the people at the library who talked with us were able to say, we serve all kinds of people, and the social problems they bring into the library sometimes create challenges for us, for sure. And they're happy that we're helping them get skills to deal with that. But again, they say what's really we don't know how to handle is our supervisors being sexually harassing to us, or a coworker who displays offensive materials, or those kinds of things. So there's a connection here.
Yes.
Thank you. Um, if there's any other questions, you can add them into the chat. While we're waiting on that, is it okay if I chime in here just for a moment? I also have a background in ESD, and I took classes in my late 20s, and I can tell you that there is a pre-Sarah in the workplace and a post-Sarah in the workplace. And I'm really grateful for that, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. If you've not ever been taught certain skills, then you don't know them. And I think for me, understanding what boundaries were, understanding what my boundaries were, having a framework for having difficult conversations, for asking for what I needed, those all made quite a difference in my life when it came to the workplace. And so I think that when I think about ESD skills, I think about how transferable they are to each part of my life. So I might use those same skills in the workplace, but I also might use them in at the house, or with a relationship, or with my children. And so I think that, yeah, I think the skills themselves change us, and we change the environments we're in.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I chime back in also?
Yes, we have about a minute.
Great, thank you. Nancy mentioned something in her presentation about undoing the socialization that happens to especially young girls. And that's what martial arts and sport did for me. And that's what we heard from Willa in her testimony, that it undid that for her, that there was this equality that she wasn't seeing in any other place that she saw in martial arts at Thousand Waves. So again, if we can inspire you through this workshop, through this presentation, to see that's the power of martial arts, that's the power of sport for young girls at a young age, being exposed to this equality, because that's what it is. And they may not be seeing that anywhere else in their life, but they'll see it there.
Thank you. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, what I love about this work is that there's always a next layer. There's always something new to learn. There's always more to gain. And so, Nancy, would love for you to teach us a little bit of empowerment self-defense right now, if you will.
Okay, I'll do my best in the very limited time we have. We organize, all the people on this panel, we organize our ESD teaching around something we call the 5 fingers of safety, which are think, yell, run, fight, tell. Okay, it's a little poem. It's easy to remember. It rhymes. Each word is important in and of itself and has a teaching attached to it. And each one has deeper meanings inside. So let's look at think. Think is where we collect our mental strategies and talk about the ways to use our minds to stay safe. The most foundational idea here is awareness. We need accurate knowledge about violence. We can't rely on myths. So while we do cover stranger danger, because people are sometimes harmed by strangers, we do our best to make sure that young women are aware how much more likely they are to know their aggressor, abuser, assailant than for it to be a stranger. Another aspect of awareness has to do with listening, being aware of, tuning into, and listening to our gut feelings about what's happening. We say, let's observe the behaviors of people around us and ask ourselves, what's going on here? Am I getting a funny feeling? We try to direct our minds towards the question of, what do I need to feel safe and respected? And leave aside that worry about what are they going to think of me if I make a fuss. Another key mental strategy is assertiveness. Many of us, including myself, were not raised to respond to conflict assertively. We either fall into the role of being passive or challenging every comer and being aggressive ourselves. But I found that I was able to learn how to project assertiveness through my words, my tone of voice, my body language, by how I use my eyes and making eye contact. So our goal when we help people project assertiveness is to have them be seen as a person who knows their rights and will act to defend them. The second finger, after think, is yell. And a loud yell in and of itself is a core ESD skill. It has three wonderful outcomes. One, it forces me to breathe. And when I breathe, I can think. And when I can think, I can make a plan for how to get away. It also might alert any bystanders in the area that I need help. And thirdly, it has an impact on the aggressor, assailer, abuser who is counting on having whatever they're doing be a secret. So a loud yell just interrupts that plan and brings the violence out into the open. Another deeper aspect of yell, and we work on this in depth in our programs, is to help people learn to set boundaries and hold those boundaries against pushback. And we do this with scenarios that are drawn from the participants' real life experiences. When you work in scenarios that are relevant and real, those are the methods that enable the skills to stick and to be available to you if you need them in a real life dangerous situations. This work is very hard, but the reward is confidence that if you need it, you will be able to breathe, to speak up and say what you need, to intensify your message as needed until the harassment or violence stops. The third finger, run, is where we focus on avoidance strategies. We teach how to control the space between us and danger in order to be able to avoid being grabbed. But we think of it metaphorically as controlling the level of engagement. If we're in a safe space, we keep it safe by not opening the door. If we're not happy with what's going on in the subway car, we move to another car on the train. We teach our teens to leave the party when they're not feeling safe there, when everybody's pairing off for more private activities that they don't want to be a part of. And of course, we talk about the very hard but important work of leaving toxic relationships, ending friendships, and beginning to connect with a support network to make a safety plan to get out of an abusive situation. The fourth finger, fight, gives us tools we can use to interrupt a physical attack that is happening and to escape to safety. Fighting back is a right and a choice. Here's how you do it. It's a simple equation. You strike with 100% commitment into the weak, vulnerable areas on the person who's hurting you's body, which might be the head, the throat, the groin, the knees, and you use the naturally strong parts of your body, the heel of your palm, the heel of your foot. You direct those strikes with full force and full commitment to the best of your ability, accompanying them with a loud yell until you can get away. It's not sportive fighting. It's not the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's not martial arts. It's dirty fighting that we hope we never have to do. The final finger of safety is tell. And tell is about healing. The experience of violence is upsetting at best and deeply traumatizing at worst. We know that people are left with unhealed physical, emotional, and mental burdens that when you talk about what happened to you with a trusted person, that healing process can begin to start. Tell is also about breaking secrets and breaking silence and bringing things out into the opening. So we talk about how to listen without judgment when a survivor shares their experiences with you, giving them that important message that they're not alone and it wasn't their fault. That's the best I can do in 5 minutes of the idea of the 5 fingers of safety and how we use them to transmit these skills.
Thank you, Nancy. And now we just want to take a moment to listen to some testimony of people who have been impacted by ESD firsthand?
Again, I would say my self-defense skills have been invaluable, particularly around using my voice, I would say, and creating peace.
Biggest thing that I take away from martial arts, especially empowerment self-defense training that we have here at the dojo, in terms of my professional and work environment, is setting of boundaries. One of my most important takeaways from our empowerment self-defense program is that violence doesn't just happen, and there's many. The umbrella of violence is so much larger than I think I thought it was before I was learning about what violence against women really looks like. And in the workplace environment, and even in my personal life, just recognizing that there are steps that lead to violence, and that in order to prevent that violence, there's steps that can be taken much further in advance to cut that off before it happens, and to keep myself safe and others safe as well. I had never really thought about needing to think that I am a person worthy of protecting. And because if you don't think that you're worth protecting, you're not going to take action. That was a huge takeaway for me from that program. But it also taught me a lot about boundary setting and how violence is a pattern. It's an escalation. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. So there are steps that I can take prior to violence occurring that can prevent it, which is great.
The foundational principles of empowerment self-defense that have meant the most to me are: I'm worth defending, I have a right to defend myself, and I can defend myself. And that last piece, again, as a survivor, has been particularly important to me. Everybody, regardless of their size, their mass, their height, their weight, has vulnerable targets. And everyone, again, regardless of their size and their weight, has strong natural weapons. And I have learned that I have the capacity to use what I naturally have been given to defend myself, and if need be, to defend other people. People ask me all the time whether I've had the opportunity to use my martial arts in real life, and I've been training now for almost 22 years. They're surprised when I say I use those skills all the time, because I use them for boundary setting, I use them for assertive communication. I have not had the opportunity to use my physical skills. Because of both my martial arts training and my training in empowerment self-defense, I feel very confident that if the need arose, I could use my skills, my physical skills, to keep myself safe and to keep other people safe. And for me, that's what martial arts gives me, that's what empowerment self-defense gives all of us, is the ability to be more present in the world, to take up more space, to be more engaged in the world. And as a self-defense teacher, that's really what I'm hoping people will take away from the experiences: the confidence and the skills to know they can keep themselves safe and they can live a bigger life.
Just as these testimonials are really important, it's really important to know that teaching these skills to young people at a young age can be really life-changing to them in the moment, but also in their future. So let's take a look at how the 5 fingers of self-defense can make a difference to children.
Again, I would say my self-defense, again, I would say
when teaching empowerment self-defense skills for kids, we use the 5 fingers of self-defense model in conjunction with a framework of rights and responsibilities. Rights being what we can ask of others, and responsibilities being what others can ask of us. Understanding our responsibilities helps us to be peacemakers, and knowing our rights helps us decide when and how to use our 5 fingers. We use the think finger to practice awareness of our surroundings and to check in with how we feel. We use the yell finger to practice communicating clearly, taking into account facial expression and body language, as well as volume and word choice. We use the run finger to talk about what to do if someone isn't respecting our boundaries. We practice building an invisible wall with our bodies and strong voices to keep someone at a safe distance from us. We use the fight finger only when necessary and practice hitting hard with natural weapons that can be powerful no matter how big you are. And lastly, we use the tell finger to share with a trusted adult and get help when we need it. If there is one thing all of our students should take away, it is the knowledge that they are worth defending, that their physical and emotional well-being is important, and that they can and should use the tools they have to keep themselves safe.
I love it. It's so great. Oh, let's see. Okay, so now we're going to practice together. We have a little interactive opportunity here. We're going to use something called Mentimeter. So what we'll be doing is Nancy will help lead us, but I want to just set it up ahead of time, is there'll be a QR code that comes up on the screen. You'll use your device to scan that QR code, and then you'll see some statements, and you'll be able to rank those statements in order from 1 to 4. Nancy will go into a little bit more about how to rank those, but we're going to go ahead and move over to the Mentimeter opportunity so that we can work together. Okay, and I'm going to just real quick move this so that it's up in the right corner. So if you'll scan that QR code with your phone, these 4 statements will come up. And Nancy, why don't you go ahead and lead us through the ranking?
I don't necessarily want you to understand that they're okay, we're getting messages that say the responding is turned off, Sarah. I'm not sure about that, but
Let me check on that.
if it is, it doesn't matter. We can work it without the Mentimeter.
Let's
We can just
see.
talk through it.
See if that
I'm able
works
to
now.
respond. I'm able to respond.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I crafted these 4 statements, and I'm asking you, based on what you've learned in this workshop or what you've learned in your life, to tell me which ones you think are a good representation of the think finger of safety. And I'm happy to see that everybody understands that believing that we're worth defending is key, and that presenting ourselves assertively does enhance our safety. I'm very happy to see that this one achieving second ranking is that it's more important to think about what I need than it is to worry about what other people are thinking of me. So really, all 4 of these are important ESD principles connected to the think finger of safety. Believing we're worth defending, putting our own needs first when it comes to safety, using assertiveness, and understanding that violence can come from anywhere, not just from a stranger. Okay, I think you understand think very well. Let's look at yell.
Just a second here. Okay.
So here
So you'll
is-
scan this one.
Sarah, it prompts you automatically to go to the next question once you've once you've answered the first one.
Great, thank you.
Oh, good to know. Okay, so I'm going to wait till your votes come in. Which ones you think are accurately representative of what I explained as the yell finger of safety, and which ones not so much? Excellent. Okay, 3 out of these 4 statements are all core parts of the yell finger of safety. We talked about a loud yell having multiple beneficial purposes to us. And I hope I stressed, I may not have gotten to it accurately enough, but it's not just the words that matter. If I say, sorry, or I say, please don't hurt me, I'm not communicating the overall message that I'm trying to get across. So words and tone and body language and use of my eyes, being willing to look somebody in the eyes, not for a staring contest, but just to make eye contact. Those are all important parts of yell. It is definitely our right to call out hurtful speech and behavior and to insist that it stop. In fact, we are encouraging ourselves as ESD practitioners to interrupt violence at its very earliest stages, because that's when the most peaceful options for resolving it exist. The longer we wait and the closer the danger gets to us, the fewer options we have for how to end it. And the 4th statement was there as a kind of a trick, because pleading and begging have not been generally associated in research studies as the most effective strategies to try in a sexual assault. The studies don't zero in on exactly which ESD skill is to get the credit for those stats that Ryan shared with you. But what they generally describe is the best outcomes come from people using multiple active strategies, trying, yelling loud, running away if they can, fighting back if they have to. So you did good on that one. Let's look at the idea of run, of avoidance strategies, and see what we learned there. I see people. There we go. All right. Okay. The group that's voting on this Mentimeter are all excellent students because you have identified the statements that really do represent smart ESD strategies. It's always safer to avoid violence if we can. Our teens sometimes have a hard time understanding that, depending on what community they come from and how they've been socialized. But avoiding violence by giving ground, or even if it's unfair, people say, why should I have to go a different way? That's the shortest this way to my house. I say, if there's problematic people hanging out on that block, why not go a different way? So that's a very smart strategy, number one. Number two addresses a really important question that never fails to come up in an ESD program, which is, what should I do if I think someone's following me? And interestingly, almost all of us start out believing that we shouldn't let on that we suspect anything. We should just go faster or scurry along and hope we can get to where we're going before something bad happens. But ESD says, no, that's not the safest strategy. The safest thing to do is turn around and just check it out. You will know immediately by those intuitive gut feelings about whether your suspicion was correct or incorrect, and that will guide you to an appropriate next action. So turning around and checking when I think someone may be following me is a very smart run finger of safety strategy. And of course, if a friend or loved one is habitually taking small jabs of talking and behaving in a way that makes me feel manipulated and controlled, that is definitely a red flag for more serious forms of abuse. And following what we said before, the sooner I take action to get the support I need to distance myself from that relationship, the better my safety will be. And the last one, that's a red flag there. That's a fake question in there, because pretending to help somebody is a ploy that people use in committing assaults. And so we need to trust ourselves and to accept help on our own terms and to decline help if we don't want any help. So you were right to mark that one as being questionably connected to the run finger of safety. Let's see what you learned about the fourth finger. Okay, this one's very interesting. So we all understand what you heard over and over in the testimonies and in my talk as well, that everybody does have strong natural weapons on their body and weak and vulnerable targets as well. So if we strike with using our strong natural weapons into weak and vulnerable targets, that is an effective form of using the fight finger of safety. My personal belief very strongly is that if I'm being hurt physically, if I need to fight back and have to hurt the other person somewhat in order to get them to stop hurting me, my feeling is that is not violent. We each make our own decisions on that, but that's how I teach that skill. The third one, maybe it's the way I phrased it, but I just want to be clear here that martial arts fighting and ESD fighting do have entirely different purposes. In martial arts fighting, or at least the kind Arlene engaged with, the goal is not to damage your opponent. The point of the martial arts fighting in many systems is to have a game of skill and to score more points and be the fastest and be the most athletic and be the most strategic. And in our dojo, when we engage in the combat part of the art, the sparring, we have extensive effort put towards trying not to hurt each other so that we can continue to play together and enjoy this healthy activity for years and years of our lives. Whereas in self-defense, I'm not there to play a game or to spar. I am there to do whatever's necessary in the quickest way to enable me to get out of there. So they use the same methods, but the mindset around them is different between martial arts and self-defense. And I'm happy that you recognize that the fourth question was a plant, because there is no evidence to suggest that the women who have had to use physical self-defense skills to defend themselves had any training, much less a lot of training. When you ask survivors who had to fight back, how did you do it? What did you do? They don't tell me I did a palm heel or a front kick, or they don't talk in those terms. They say things like, I don't know. I went crazy. I realized it was him or me, and I decided I was getting out of there. And I just did what I needed to do until it ended and I could escape. So we're not talking about physical skills that are complex, that only young, strong, athletic people are doing. We're talking about simple, basic techniques of directing force into vulnerable areas like the eyes or the throat to interrupt. If the person can't see, they can't keep attacking me. They can't breathe for a moment. They can't keep attacking me. If their knee buckles under them, maybe I can run away. Those kinds of things. That's how the fight finger of safety works. Let's look at the last one. Okay, this is interesting too. Let's go through these one by one. I'm glad to know that the first statement, that telling someone I trust will help me heal, is a true statement. Vitally important to break that isolation that violence creates for survivors. So that belongs number one up there. Number two is also very important, though. I want to remind us that so many people do not experience justice through the criminal justice system. Some of us are lucky to be believed much more often and much more easily than others of us. And when I say tell, I'm not necessarily saying report. Only you can make the decision on whether the type of violence you want to talk about is going to get the attention it needs in the criminal justice system. Number three is a little bit of a trick question. I put it there because I want to stress that when you're privileged to be the person that a survivor tells their story to, actually, they're not looking for your advice. In 99% of the cases, that's not what they need, and that's not what will help them. What they need is a non-judgmental, open-hearted listening and a confirmation that it's not their fault and that they did the best they could. They did a lot of things right in order to have survived that experience and to be here now to talk about it. So even though it's natural for us to go, oh, you took the train late at night. Oh, you wore expensive jewelry on your wrist and on your hands. Oh, you did those things. Maybe that's not such a good idea. That is so unuseful to a survivor who is dealing with the traumatic aftermath of having been hurt. So listening is what we mean in the tell finger of safety. And the last one is something we hear a lot. People say, oh, you want me to talk about that? It happened 10 years ago. And I say, yes, it's still there. It's still there, no matter how long ago it happened. And it's never too late to start talking about the violence that you've experienced. And it's never too late for us to learn that we're not the only one it happened to. And it's never too late to find our tribe, our team, our allies to help us heal. Thank you for submitting to the challenge of identifying things that are actually part of the 5 fingers of safety. You all did a great job. Everybody is very well informed.
Thank you, Nancy. And now we're going to begin to tie it all together. So we had such a great foundation of Thousand Waves, martial arts, the impact of it, also how the skills matter coming from a young age. And now we're going to hand it over to Arlene Lemus to talk about Pave prevention, because that next is as we grow up into adults and we enter the workforce, how important it is to have these skills into the workforce. And so Pave prevention is a social enterprise. Let's see here. Sorry, my thing was in the way. A social enterprise initiative that offers training, guidance, and advice to leaders, their staff and employees, and the communities they operate and serve on preventing, mitigating, responding to, and healing from violence. And as you've heard already from Arlene Lemus, she is the CEO, and she now brings her advocacy from sport and martial arts and ESD into the workplace. And I'll turn it over to her so she can take it from here.
Thank you, Sarah. Before I even start talking about what you're seeing on the screen, I want you to imagine, I want you to imagine a world where a young girl has had the influences of a sport or a martial art at a young age, and then has had the impact of empowerment self-defense in their teens and 20s. And now they are in the workplace and they are also reinforcing these skills learned younger in life while they were younger. Now they are reinforcing it with the skills that Pave is bringing into the workplace. Okay, so just imagine what this world looks like if that is the trajectory, if that is the path that we are exposing our young girls and women to. Thank you, Sarah. I will continue now. So first, I will share with you that violence is impacting us all on a daily basis. And when you think about violence, I want you to think about it as Pave thinks about it, it's the full spectrum of violence, which is anything from a microaggression and bullying to full-blown physical event. So it's impacting us whether someone is dealing with violence at home, a domestic violence situation. When they bring themselves to work, they're bringing that with them. Whether it's growing up in a community where there's gun violence or war, they are bringing that violence with them into the workplace, and it's impacting them, and it's impacting the workplace in general. Okay, so I want you to think along those lines. It's not just violence that may be occurring in the workplace, and that's happening too, but it's all of those ways that violence is influencing our life every day. Why is it important now for Pave to do what it's doing? Why is it important for Pave to take empowerment self-defense, present it to corporations, institutions, organizations in this package of human safety skills? Who says so, and why is it important now? That's why I want to share this slide with you, right? Because if you see on the top of the Surgeon General's new initiatives, protection from harm, number one, safety and security. And this isn't only physical safety. This isn't only extra buzzers on the exit door. This is psychological and personal safety, emotional safety. Equal Opportunity Commission has also acknowledged it in all its reports and initiatives that violence in the workplace is imperative. It is impacting us all. OSHA now acknowledges the definition of violence as bullying, microaggressions through physical events. And in the United States, there is an initiative from the Center of Disease Control, the CDC, that it sets goals to reduce things that are harming our society, that are harming our citizens. And that's Healthy People 2030. And for the first time, violence in the workplace has been acknowledged as something that needs to be addressed. It is an initiative to reduce the impact of violence in the workplace by 2030. And then also the International Labor Organization is constantly highlighting things that are happening, violence that's happening in the workplace to women. Okay, so it is not just us that feels the importance of this. We've felt the importance of this for a long time. And any of us who have gone through violence in the workplace know the importance of it. But now more people are talking about it. So now is the time. These are just a few stats, and I chose the International Labor Organization stats so that we understand that this is a worldwide pandemic, really, epidemic, issue, trouble, concern. So 1 in 5 persons in employment have experienced at least one form of violence or harassment at work. Young women, I'll just share a couple of them. You can look at them as well. Young women were twice as likely as young men to have experienced sexual violence and harassment at work. These are staggering. So again, remember the thing I asked you to envision at the beginning of my spot here is that imagine if that young girl has the influence of a martial arts or a sport at a young age, is reinforced with empowerment self-defense, and now receives the training in the workplace, what it does to these statistics. So these are a few of the things that PAVE, and I do want to share what PAVE stands for. It stands for Proactive Anti-Violence Training. And these are some of the competencies, the 10 areas of focus that we try to bring into our training. Cultural competency, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, empowerment and human safety skills. And we title this human safety skills because we just feel that it lands on corporate and institutional organizations in a different way than empowerment self-defense, but is deeply rooted in empowerment self-defense. We know that when organizations have a culture of safety, that it allows people to grow at a better rate, to achieve at a better rate. So we know that this is impacting leadership development. It improves communication. Nancy touched upon it in her empowerment self-defense training, but our training is trauma-informed care and response, and deeply based in scenario-based learning, which we know lands on us, on ourselves differently than an online module or reading something. So scenario-based training really does allow our body to hold those skills retain those skills at a deeper rate. Operational resources, we work with teams and site evaluations to improve safety. We create almost like a first aid kit or a safety response. Thank you. Next slide. So this is one of the pillars of our training, and this is the spectrum of awareness and response. It is a simple question for Nancy's 5 fingers and the way she presented the 5 fingers of ESD. This is deeply rooted in think. What's going on here? And we ask that each individual who is participating in our training create this spectrum of awareness for themselves as an individual. Where am I? Am I green? Am I yellow? Am I red? Am I comfortable in this situation? Am I uncomfortable? Am I terrified? So we ask that they create this check-in process for themselves. What's going on here? But also they use this to evaluate situations that they may be dealing with or have to intervene. So this is an important, it's simple but not easy, right? So this is a tool that we use and a skill that we'd like people to develop. Okay, this quick question, what's going on here? And we also provide, I'm not sure if we have it on this, but one that is empty without these words. There you go. Thank you, Sarah. Without these words, so that you fill this in. What word resonates for you to be a green situation, or how you feel when you're green? What word for you works when it's a yellow, when something's just a little not right, or you are not feeling a little not right? You didn't sleep well, you didn't eat well, a family member's sick. What's moving you to yellow? What words resonate? And then what would be red? Okay. And this is also a shorthand of communications for communication when we're developing a better team dynamic. This slide just shares a few of the partners that we've had through trainings. One of the most notable is, you'll see here, Alameda County Library, and we've had a fantastic partner there. We've been able to collect a lot of data on the efficacy on what Pave is doing and what human safety skills, which again is deeply rooted in empowerment self-defense, what impact we're having on that workplace. I think we have a little video that will capture some of the feedback we're receiving. Not hearing anything, Sarah. Let we go.
One of the things that people may not realize is that library staff, everything from a page up to a library manager, are dealing with what we call social worker light situations. There are often incidents where our staff has to intervene or has to talk to somebody about what their behavior is in the library because it's impacting other members.
Hey.
So you sitting here, so
Yeah, I've got some friends coming, so you know what? You're making me really uncomfortable.
Wow.
She said she was uncomfortable. Could you please leave?
What Pave has done is help to train my team at the library on trauma-informed, racial equity-based de-escalation. This is something that libraries have needed for a long time, and we have struggled with the back side of libraries. We're a public place, so everything that exists in the public exists in our spaces.
Hey, back off!
Khakis, black jacket, go team.
I have a video of him.
Yes, I like
Yes. Did you see that?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
It's not okay.
Right? Oh, thank gosh.
Oh, it's just so
Okay,
nice.
so then I'll just hold it.
Oh, there it is.
I'll hold it there until he starts to get a little uncomfortable.
This feels uncomfortable.
And so we needed to make sure that our libraries came back full-fledged from COVID, active and alive as they were before, because we're a public need, we're a public necessity. And so that's truly why we wanted to have Pave come and talk to our staff.
But then you guys really grew on me. And then I feel like today, of all days, I feel like all of it clicked together in my brain, and I can see ways that I can apply this to the work I do. It makes me think of all these other things that we can do to build this foundation of having nonviolent communities.
When I first started, I had no idea what to expect. And when I heard the word role playing, I freaked out. But I'm actually you guys made this such a comfortable place.
I've had the training And now it's just a matter about being intentional in how I will apply these, and more importantly, when I will apply what I've learned.
The trainers for Pave were amazing. They not only came to us with a curriculum developed, they did a physical assessment of every location so they knew what we were dealing with physically. And then throughout each cohort, there would be slight changes that they made to the curriculum based on the needs of the people in the room. So that kind of flexibility and meeting our needs was one of the most satisfying parts of working with Pave.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have a few minutes that we could take some questions?
We have 3 minutes, so what I propose is that we just finish up this real quick full circle, and then any Q&A that anybody has, they can put in the chat. They can stay after with us. We want to be mindful of the time. Or we can quickly go through these quick questions, maybe 1 minute apiece, and then open up to questions. So coming back full circle, how does adult learning safety skills in the workplace impact families and communities? And if one or two people just want to take a quick moment, not very long, to just address this, that'd be great.
Sure. I'll chime in real quick. We see what we're doing in the workplace as a little bit of a Trojan horse. Yes, we're improving productivity and things are getting better. Bottom lines are getting better for a corporate client. But really, that skill set that we're teaching the individual, they're not only using it at work. They're using it at home to set boundaries. They're using their voice on the train ride in. They're using those skills throughout their day. And they're teaching it to their kids, they're teaching it to their neighbors. So that's how this training in the workplace, where we do most of our adult learning, this is how it starts to spread.
Thank you. And then this is for Lucia. How does child and youth learning ESD martial arts sports prepare them for the future? And also, Ryan, if you want to comment.
I can go ahead and start. I think just to reiterate what Arlene has already said, shared from her own personal experience, what I have had in my own personal experience, and what we saw in some of our testimonials, that these foundational skills that one gains from both martial arts training and sport experience and self-defense, the sense of self-worth, the sense of confidence and empowerment, are things that we carry through our lives. And when we get children at a young age, before they have experienced any harassment or discrimination, and we show them that they are worth defending and that they leave here with the knowledge that they can defend themselves, it helps to cut off that violence early. And they never question whether they can or should speak up for themselves. And I also just want to throw out that these safety skills that we teach, these 5 fingers, these concepts, are not just limited to the context of a single workshop or a couple of workshops. They are skills that we reinforce and teach every day. In our karate classes, think means awareness of your space. It means managing your feelings. Yell means how we communicate with our partners on the training floor. Run is how we interact with other students who maybe aren't acting the way we know they should, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just about you get the 1-hour workshop, you get the introduction to it. It's the framework. It's you experience this every single day, and this as just a deep truth. And I think that is how we shift not just individual perception and individual empowerment, but community as a whole.
All I'd add very quickly is to say that unfortunately, younger people are at a greater risk of violence, starting in kind of the mid to late teen years and up through the college years. So that's why I'm so impressed by the research that I talked about earlier that indicates strong outcomes for young women who've had this training. Unfortunately, a lot of these studies are in university settings. I hate to think it's probably true that people who are not fortunate enough to be in university settings are actually at greater risk of violence.